Welcome back to Naptime Sports Talk Podcast. Thank you for tuning in to our latest episode. Enjoy the show. Welcome back to Naptime Sports Talk Podcast. On today's episode, I'm going to be discussing the 27-24 victory over the Detroit Lions. Yeah, just to get started off, I'll be running solo on this one today. DC's unfortunately unable to make it to this episode, so just wanted to get an episode out there. It's been a few weeks since we last recorded one, so sorry about that. Just been busy with life and work, and we'll try to do better moving forward to give the listeners more content and more episodes. So yeah, just going right into the game. If you told me before the game that the Minnesota Vikings were going to go into Ford Field and walk away with a victory over the Detroit Lions, I would have probably been like, I want to see that first, and maybe doubting your judgment on that. But hey, that's what happened today. They showed up. They played tremendous on defense. Finally, they seemed like they had a fire kind of lit under them on the defensive side of the ball. I think maybe a part of that too is getting people back like Andrew Van Ginkel, who just seems to have a major effect on the team in a positive way. Whenever he's out there, seems like the team just has a little more energy, a little more burst, a little more boost. So I think having AVG back this week definitely helped. You could see him all over the field making plays. And then if you would have told me also at the beginning of the game that we would have held the Detroit Lions to 65 rushing yards between David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, two of the best backs in the NFL, one of the best tandems at the running back position in the NFL. So I was really impressed overall with how the defense showed up today. Even just looking at Jahmyr Gibbs in general, he had 5 or 9 carries for 25 yards. His longest rush was 7 yards. His average was 2.8. And then you have him on the passing, or on the receiving end too. He was 3 catches for 3 yards. So I thought they did a nice job of shutting him down, of containing him, and making his overall day just frustrating for himself, and taking him out of the Detroit's game plan and what they want to do. You watched a lot of Detroit football, and when those guys are working, they're extremely hard to beat. So I thought the Vikings did a very nice job today on the defense side of the ball, take those 2 out of the game. And really, that affected Jared Goff. All day long, he was under duress. He was not able to effectively, the Detroit Lions weren't able to effectively work in the play action game, which they do very oftenly. You saw that kind of in the first drive of the game with Sam Laporta there on a couple big plays. So I was excited how the defense showed up today overall, and they're a huge reason why we ended up winning this game. Also, the special teams, shout out to Miles Price. He looked extremely well returning the ball. He put us in a great position there in the first quarter, or for our first drive, and the offense capitalized on that great field position. So that was extremely nice too. So going back to the defense, Eric Wilson, I thought, had a tremendous game. He was all over the field. Just how Flores was blitzing up the middle of on the defense there, or in the middle of the offense on the offensive line, making Goff not be able to step up in the pocket, which he is pretty much a pocket passer. So if you take the pocket away from him, and you're going to affect him. But overall, Goff had a pretty decent game. Speaking on that, but we were able to get after him quite oftenly. I think we had 5 sacks in the game. Then another big play was the play by I think it was Cashman. It's either Cashman. It was one of the linebackers. I think it was Cashman. Forced that fumble on David Montgomery. Put us in great field position there too. So overall defense, like I said, great game. Interior, the defense finally showed up. I was excited about that and happy about that since we spent a lot of money in that area this offseason was on the interior of the defensive line. So, but yeah, another guy that I thought looked really well was Harrison Smith coming in off the edges, blitzing. He had a batted ball down, and I saw he kind of looked like a flash of the old Harrison Smith there on defense. So it was just nice to see the defense finally show up, like I said, and finally make a good impact. So, we held the Lions to 24 points. That's pretty impressive, and I'll take that anytime we play them. And it was nice to finally beat or snap that losing streak that we had against them. So I think it's been a few years since we beat the Lions, so it was nice to finally get that victory. But yeah, so that was the defense side of the ball. Like I said, special teams showed up. The block field goal 2 at the end of the game, I think it was by Levi Drake Rodriguez, was extremely important as we ended up winning by 3 points. But overall, special teams and defense was a huge reason why we walked away with a victory there in Detroit. So, okay, I want to talk about the offense. For weeks and weeks now, I've been just waiting on this game for J.J. McCarthy to finally come back after the injury and show us what he's got. It was a rocky few weeks there, or multiple weeks with Carson Wentz at quarterback. He did the best he can, playing through some serious injury too. Hopefully his surgery went all good and he's on the mend, but he did everything he could for us and really was that placeholder until McCarthy came back and was ready to take over again for the offense. So overall, I thought he had a solid game. I thought the first quarter he looked really, really good. Second quarter, kind of little ups and downs here and there. And then, throughout the game, you'd just see little flashes of positives, little flashes of things that he can work on. The fact Tom Brady was talking about it a lot, talking about like the 1, 2, 3 ball. And that was kind of my knock on, the first few weeks too, is it just seemed like JJ was constantly just throwing that fastball all the time. And today we were able to see some glimpses of a little bit of touch on the passes. The one play in the first quarter, it was actually the first touchdown drive that Jefferson ended up one-handing that catch. But the play before that, or a few plays before that, he had a really nice ball to Addison and come down with on kind of like the left, almost like the boundary, the sideline there in the end zone. I thought it was a perfectly placed pass. The accuracy there was extremely on point. That was just things I would kind of want to see from JJ, is to see a little more touch on those passes and not always just go right to that fastball. Because, yeah, he definitely has a big arm. He's got a strong arm, and you can see that how the ball releases off of his arm or off his hand and fingers. It comes out with a tight spiral. But one thing you have to have in this league is be able to have touch passes too, and he did show that today during the game versus the Lions. The one play where they had, I think it was Mason and Jones out there at the same time before Aaron Jones unfortunately came out with an injury. Hopefully he's all good with his shoulder. Wasn't able to come in, but he was extremely effective today when he was out there. But it was a great execution of the play. They had man-to-man coverage. The linebacker was lined up on Jones, which he was on the right of McCarthy. He went out to the left on that wheel route. That linebacker who was in charge of being in one-on-one or man coverage on Jones kind of got locked up not able to get over to the flat in time, and he had to pretty much go across the whole field. This was a great play designed by KOC in the offense. And then Jones caught that ball right there. McCarthy just had to put just a little bit of loft on it, and he was able to break a big gain for about 20, 30 plus yards. So just little things like that, throwing over defensive lineman, just having more touch on his passes. That was something that I wanted to continue to see from him. And hopefully as the season goes on, that he will continue to work on that and show more of those touch passes. So going to the things that I looked at from McCarthy today, I thought he was extremely poised in the pocket. He was pressured a ton as well. I don't think Darisaw is not fully healthy yet from his knee. He was, you could tell, I think it was on that Aiden Hutchinson penalty where he leg kicked McCarthy there. First, when I saw it, I was like, holy crap, how is that a penalty? But after they broke it down and said the rule, yeah, you could clearly see that Aiden Hutchinson's does kick him in the leg. So this isn't a UFC match. This isn't MMA. This is football. So that was kind of funny to see that out there a little bit. But yeah, go back to Darius on that play. I just thought he wasn't able to really kind of use his leverage in his legs, and you can kind of see I think it was his left knee. I'm not sure if it's left or right knee that's the one that was injured, but you could see that he was not really able to fully put a lot of weight on that leg. So hopefully Darisaw will be okay going forward, and he will become healthier as the season progresses. But overall, he played pretty poised in the pocket. He did have a lot of missed throws. Sometimes the throws were behind wide receivers. Sometimes he sailed them over wide receivers' heads on the sidelines. And that's just one thing that he just needs to continue to work on. The accuracy with his goal ball or with his fastball there, I think will be a good thing to continue work. And, perfect example when he threw that pass to Naylor. Naylor kind of had trapped against his leg. And, man, what a lucky bounce that was to go pretty much right into the arms as he was falling of Terrion Arnold for his first NFL interception. But overall, like I said, there's things for McCarthy to improve on. There's things to walk away from that I was excited about as well. So I think that, there's going to be ups and downs, ebbs and flows of the season. He's going to make mistakes. But at the end of the day, we just have to be patient with him. He's only 22 years old. He's only played 3 games now in the NFL. And to come off of the time that he was away for that ankle injury and to come out here and put on that performance of that poise and to go in Detroit and beat the Detroit Lions at home was something that I was not expecting. It was something that impressed me with his performance, the way that he was just able to manage the game. He didn't his stat line's not going to wow you. He is 14 of 25 with 143 yards, 2 touchdowns at 1 pick, QBR rate of 54.3, and then he had the 9 carries for 12 yards and a touchdown. So, the stat line is not going to jump off and just wow you. But the way that he handled the game within the game, I think was impressive. And it also showed, his maturity too at such a young age. So is he going to be perfect? No. Is any quarterback ever perfect? No. Even the great quarterbacks have their games. And, you also have to remember, look at, for a perfect example, Drake May, and he's the same quarterback in the same draft class as McCarthy. He had a really tough year last year, but you know what? The Patriots stuck with him. They kept playing him. the Patriots were also had a pretty tough roster last year too. Point is, over these weeks, I've seen a lot of things about, you know, McCarthy not being the guy. Who are we gonna be drafting here in the NFL draft? A quarterback coming out of college, and it just left me kind of shocked that we would already think that we're at the point of needing to start making decisions like that when this kid has only played 2 football games so far. And yes, he had 7 quarters of pretty poor football, 1 quarter of great football versus Chicago Bears in the fourth quarter. But to write someone off kind of after 2 games played when the kid is this young, he didn't have all the weapons on offense yet. Didn't have Addison. He had the injuries on the O-line already happening. But to just kind of write him off like that just kind of made me a little disappointed in our fan base a little bit with this, everyone wants everything right now. And you know what? The biggest question coming in this season was always the quarterback play. That was the biggest thing for me the whole year. I thought our defense would be a whole lot better than what they've showed here through the first 8 games. But today they finally came out and showed up that I expected them how to play. And another thing is with the injuries too, like the offensive line, how many games we miss with Darius out, O'Neal banged up, Jackson out, and we don't have our starting center with Kelly. Hopefully he's doing okay with his concussions. We might not see him the rest of the year. Hopefully we do, but just to write off McCarthy already when he's only played 2 games was just very surprising to me. And we have to be patient with him. We can't just throw in the towel and act like the sky is falling if someone has one bad game. You go to a lot of quarterbacks, NFL. It's a tough game. It's a very tough league to play in. Quarterback is the toughest position to play in football. And every time that these quarterbacks when they're young have had tough games, you don't just give up on them. You just got to let them be patient. And thankfully, I don't think our coaching staff is like that. They're going to be patient with him. So, and at the end of the year, I will make my final kind of judgment of how I think his year went. And does that mean, unless he comes back out here now for the rest of the season and he looks terrible or he gets hurt again, but I think we need to wait and have a full picture before we just start making decisions or having these opinions about, who are we going to have here in the NFL draft be our next quarterback. Because I'm telling you what, right now, there's not a lot of options in this NFL draft. And it was looking differently before the season started, but a lot of these guys have not panned out the way that we've expected, and some of them have looked pretty porous. So, unless you're a top couple, then you have Fernando Mendoza out of Indiana, and then Dante Moore out of Oregon had looked pretty solid. So, but you know what? Like before, the Vikes won't be up, but they won't even be in that range to be picking. So, but let's hold on. Let's pump the brakes on, the whole McCarthy talk, and let's give him the rest of the season to see what he does. At least that's what I'm doing. So, but moving forward, it's going to be an interesting rest of the season. The schedule continues to be challenging. We have the Baltimore Ravens here at home next week. Then we have the Bears at home. Those division games are always challenging. Never know what's going to happen. The Bears 5-3. They've looked really well since we played them last. Then we go to Lambeau Field versus the Green Bay Packers. They've been looking extremely well too. Unfortunately, they lost their star tight end today, Tucker Kraft. to an knee injury. And that was a surprise today too, the Packers losing versus the Carolina Panthers. I did not see that coming. Then we go on to play the Seahawks at Seattle. That'll be a fun one versus Sam Darnold. Then we have the Commanders at home. Commanders have been a little bit of a shell of themselves. Obviously, they've missed Jaden Daniels some games too. Then we go to Dallas, New York, play the Giants. Then the last 2 games of the year, we have the Lions and Packers. So we'll see how the rest of the season goes. We're 4-4 right now, and hopefully they keep it going and give us some more exciting games and some better weeks. So, but yeah, thank you for listening today and joining me on the podcast. Big D will be back with me here the next podcast. I just want to get one out before the work week started here. But yeah, thanks for listening, and hey, enjoy the week. It's always easier to, at least for me, it's always, the week goes a little better when the Vikings win, that's for sure. So, all right, everyone, have a good week. We'll catch you next time. Let's go Vikes. Thank you for listening to our episode. Be sure to give us a follow on Instagram and X at Naptime Sports Talk Podcast for content related to the pod. Thank you for the support.